This is Tokyo, a city built on efficiency, on speed, on a relentless drive forward. Every microsecond accounted for, every data packet optimized, every line of code perfect. Tokyo is a machine. But what happens when the perfect machine stutters? What happens when a city of 14 million people driven by the future is forced to relive the past? Kenji Morita, a mid-level network engineer, was not a philosopher. He was an architect of stability. His shift that night, deep in a substation beneath Shibuya, was supposed to be routine. He was watching the city breathe through his monitors. Then, the flicker. Not a simple failure, not a surge, a complete, instantaneous collapse, the kind that shouldn't happen outside of a textbook disaster. Kenji felt the room go cold. He checked the main grid diagnostics. Black. Zero power delivery. The panic was immediate, but Kenji was trained. He ran through the restart sequence. Minutes later, the backup generators kicked in, slowly bringing his terminal back to life. But as the first diagnostic lights flashed green, Kenji saw something that froze his blood faster than the cold darkness. The timestamp on his terminal. It wasn't 12:15 a.m., it was 11:30 a.m., and the date was yesterday. The system had not rebooted, it had reverted. The human mind searches for logic, a glitch, a corrupted clock file, a server bug. But Kenji's mind held an inventory of the missing hours. He remembered the conversation he had with his boss at 3 p.m. that next day, the one that hadn't happened yet. He remembered the specific coffee order he had placed at 4 p.m. He remembered the specific shade of lipstick the convenience store clerk was wearing when she dropped her pen behind the counter at 4:32 p.m. He walked across Shibuya Crossing. He saw the accident, the tiny fender bender between a taxi and a delivery scooter, before it happened. He dodged the scooter, the rider cursing him, then freezing as the taxi clipped his back tire, exactly as Kenji knew it would. He was living a rewind. But why and how could an electrical fault, a simple blackout, rewind time? His mind raced, cataloging the terrifying impossibility of his knowledge. He had to stop this. He had to prove it. The world was demanding he live the same day twice, but only he knew the script. The silence of the city, now bustling with life, felt like a deliberate lie. He was an actor on a stage where the audience was blind, and the play had been performed before. Kenji needed scientific backup, not just personal verification. He raced towards Tokyo University's physics department. Dr. Akari Ito was his last resort, a theoretical physicist specializing in the entanglement of complex systems, specifically how massive digital networks might influence the space-time fabric itself. Kenji barged into her office, his tie loose, his voice frayed. Dr. Akari Ito, Mr. Morita, your claims are bordering on professional sabotage, a temporal rollback of the entire Tokyo grid? We are talking about a violation of every known law of physics. This is delusional at best. Kenji tried to explain the diagnostic logs, the internal server data that showed a literal jump back in chronological files. Akari's skepticism was a solid wall. Kenji pulled out his phone, his hand trembling as he showed her the geopolitical crisis that was meant to explode at 6 p.m., the contentious data privacy law that threatened the massive, influential technology conglomerate, Synapse Global. Kenji, that law was voted on at 6 p.m. It threatened to shut down Synapse's new AI initiative. If what I say is true, they haven't voted yet. The reset happened precisely before the crucial decision. Someone is using the city's power grid, maybe a localized failure point, as a corporate undo switch, not for disaster, but for control. Akari's eyes narrowed, moving from the desperate sincerity in Kenji's face to the complex political diagrams on his screen. The possibility wasn't just delusion, it was elegant in its terrifying scale. She couldn't ignore the precision of his knowledge. Akari decided on a rigorous test. She asked Kenji to predict the minute details of her own life, what she would eat for lunch, the specific email she was about to receive from Berlin, and the exact phrase her assistant would use when canceling her afternoon lecture. Kenji predicted every detail, not just correctly, but precisely. The horror was now mutual. Tokyo was trapped, and they were the only two observers of its chronological prison. Their next step wasn't about proving the loop, it was about finding the mechanism. Akari's research pointed to one massive unlisted power drain, the secretive data server beneath the old Shinjuku Gion National Garden, a place supposedly abandoned since the 1990s. The duo abandoned the daylight chaos of Tokyo, descending into the forgotten infrastructure beneath the city. The tunnel they found, disguised as an abandoned utilities access point near the garden's perimeter, was cold and damp, the air thick with stale electricity and dust. Akari used specialized thermal scanners. The air was cold, but the reading showed a massive hidden power draw, an anomaly that defied the city's official grid maps. As they descended deeper, Kenji began to notice terrifying shifts. The ceiling was lower than he remembered from the day before. The rusted piping on the left wall was now slightly dented. A specific graffiti tag near the third junction, a stylized Oni mask, was gone. Kenji paused, paralyzed by the feeling of instability. Kenji, it's changing. It's not a perfect loop. The memory is merging. My actions from the last day are leaving residual traces on the new day. Akari understood. The temporal buffer wasn't simply creating a copy, it was slightly corrupting the timeline with data from the previous iteration during the reset process. This wasn't a pristine rollback, it was a rough patch. Kenji discovered a tiny rolled-up sheet of paper taped to the back of a maintenance panel. The handwriting was his own. The message was chillingly brief. Don't trust the sunset. Akari is the key. The realization hit Kenji with the force of an actual blow. He wasn't the first to perceive the loop. He was following breadcrumbs left by the previous iteration of Kenji Morita. His past self had been trapped here, experimenting, optimizing his movements, trying to solve the puzzle within his limited 12-hour window. The previous Kenjis were not trying to escape, they were trying to win the corporate chess game, or perhaps save Akari. The terrifying part was that they had failed, resulting in the current reset. Their efforts, however, had left Akari's mind slightly protected from the full memory wipe. The key to her uncorrupted memory was a specific, complex emotional connection formed during one of the failed loops. Kenji looked at the woman beside him, realizing their connection was literally built on timelines that no longer existed. This wasn't just a geopolitical crisis, it was a profound personal tragedy repeated endlessly. The final access door to the facility, codenamed Project Kronos, was secured by a quantum-encrypted lock. Kenji's hands, guided by the muscle memory of his previous selves, flew across the obsolete interface. He bypassed the security in minutes, an action he could never have performed on his first day. This was the terrifying power of the loop, exponential learning used to manipulate destiny. Inside, the room was vast, cold, and cathedral-like. At its center stood the temporal buffer, a massive obsidian structure humming with an eerie, non-electrical light. It was connected by pulsing conduits that disappeared into the floor, drawing incomprehensible amounts of energy directly from a geothermal pocket beneath the city. This was not a data server, it was a power drain of unprecedented scale. Akari immediately analyzed the power signature. This energy was being used to stabilize the timeline, not just copy it. The buffer was designed not just for the Synapse Global Corporation, but for the CEO himself, an elderly, terminally ill man who was desperately trying to undo a single, catastrophic mistake he had made 40 decades ago, a personal tragedy that had created the powerful corporate empire but cost him everything else. The geopolitical crisis was merely the cover for a deeply personal, selfish quest for temporal perfection. The realization brought a heavy silence. They weren't fighting a corporation, they were fighting a ghost driven by regret. Suddenly, alarms blared, not the general city alert, but a localized, piercing siren. The corporate security teams were minutes away, having detected the intrusion through the temporal buffer's own system. The countdown on the main monitor flashed red, 000734, until the next scheduled reset. They had to act now. Kenji knew the corporate team would arrive and simply wait for the automatic reset, erasing Kenji and Akari and continuing the CEO's cruel game. Kenji and Akari faced the core dilemma: use their last minutes of unique, perfect knowledge to send a message to the outside world, or destroy the mechanism, sacrificing all they had learned. The security door rattled violently. They had less than 5 minutes. Kenji, if we send a message, they'll discredit it. They'll just reset and try again. It has to end here. Akari, we stop the loop, but we lose the memories. We lose the proof. We lose everything we've done together across these days. The emotional weight of the repeated timeline settled on them. They were making a sacrifice not of life, but their entire shared history. They had to choose the unknown future over the control